And in my opinion, this fucking community needs a goddamn enema to expel all these outriders out of it.
Treating ideas like infections and performing intellectual purges will not end well.
Remember 4 years ago when the right was like, Obama's a Muslim, he's gonna take your guns? Remember all that shit, how he laughed at all them? Remember how the right was a joke and just fear mongers and we all laughed at them and didn't take them seriously? Well, let's fast forward 4 years later, and suddenly the alt-right seems to have taken over the skeptic community.
Oh yeah, it reminds me of when the rise of misogyny threatened the atheist community, and it had to be purged for the good of the people. I don't really care about people using the word community normally. I've talked about when I first wanted to use it, but then I thought against it after a while. But when you try to treat it like community is this exclusive club that people have memberships to, and you've suddenly found a bunch of people walking around in this club who have fake memberships, and you have to purge them. Like the word skeptic is this exclusive community of people where you have to buy it and stay in this club, and if you don't buy it, you get kicked out. That goes into a dangerous area. I also want to add that I cut out some of the political stuff because I don't really have anything intelligent or worthwhile to say about that. That's not what I'm focusing on. And I know Dusty kind of does troll. I mean, I do like some of his religious stuff, so I'm not sure if this is that as well, so I'm going to treat it like it's honest, like he's actually saying what he means. Because, I don't know, I just think it sounds like that.
You look at a lot of the big channels, Sargon,
The guy who criticizes the alt-right and doesn't express their values.
Chris Reagan,
The guy who criticizes the right and doesn't express their values.
Armored Skeptic,
The guy who criticizes them and doesn't express their values.
hell, even the Amazing Atheist.
The guy who criticizes everyone and doesn't express alt-right values.
They seem to be on this alt-right kick lately.
How exactly? By just associating with them? Are the members of this exclusive club not allowed to associate with the riffraff?
In fact, the ones in this community traditionally vote Democrat. They're usually liberals.
So they don't act like they're on the right, but you're saying that they still are? So you've branded them with this word and redefined the word so that they become part of the infection, and then you can remove them away and revoke their membership. This is the same thing as SJWs using the term the right to try and taint the legitimacy of people's opinions based on this, to try and remove them from any type of conversation because of this. This isn't a healthy kind of thing to do. Intellectual purges will never get your opinion across in a healthy way. All you will be doing is otherizing yourself and cutting yourself off from people. Once you otherize people, you also have the potential to otherize yourself from them. It's like you're drawing a chalk line in front of you that people can't cross, and then when you take a step backward, you draw another line and another line. And you have to be careful with that, lest you run out of space and hit into a wall.
Hate is really the religion of the internet.
Only if you encourage it to be. Sometimes it's just an emotion or a reaction.
Channels who built up, who got huge, and pretty much the focus of what they do is either attack social justice warriors or feminists. That's like 80% of their content. That's what they focus on.
But these things do matter. They do impact life. For instance, I'm just fresh out of high school, and hopefully if I get in, I'll be in university in February. And I'm terrified to the point where I stay up at night sometimes. I'm just terrified that I'll walk into the history classes that I've applied for and I'll just find it full of that shit. Because all of these other universities, I see these crazy people running around and spouting the same shit and getting courses pulled off, getting good professors fired for these things. Especially since the courses that I'm doing, like history courses, you have to be accurate with them, and if someone rewrites them because they're offensive that way or tries to push an agenda by blocking out certain facts and only speaking about one side of things, that would be a nightmare to go into. And maybe I'm just getting overly paranoid about this because coming out with the opinions that I have lost friends. I've lost respect from people who used to be friends by showing my face on YouTube with these opinions, and there are dangers for that. So there is kind of already an effect of it, and that might be making me a bit more paranoid about going into university, but there is a big issue. A lot of the other places, like in Europe and in here in Australia, that we have it way worse, the SJW thing, so I understand why it might not be that important over there, but it really is showing over here. Like, I really wanted to watch The Red Pill, and I still do, but I don't know if it's banned over here, or if there's like a petition for it or something. But that sort of stuff is happening. And they're branding it as hate speech because it preaches something that isn't friendly to whatever their opinions are. And honestly, yes, it is tiring to talk about it sometimes, but it's one of those things where you have to keep talking about it because this is a way to actually have a say against it. If you just don't talk about it, then it's one of those things that'll just keep going and going. And it does get really frustrating. I don't like watching people start parroting all this stuff about censoring people who aren't nice or who are triggering, going around and screaming in people's faces, going around and protesting, which is fine, but then turning it into a violent protest. These things do make me really uncomfortable and really worried, but I have to talk about them because it's important, even if I get sick of it.
There are certain channels out there who all they do is attack Islam. The most evil thing on the planet, Islam. That's what they focus on. And they have a minor amount of support. But these channels who attack feminists and social justice warriors have 500,000 people following them.
SJWs and Islam go hand in hand sometimes, quite a bit, and people do talk about both. And I agree that the Masked Arab and Logic deserve way more subscribers than they have because they're really cool, and they talk about Islam. But it's one of those things where you start talking a bit about one of them, and then you end up talking about the other because they do get linked after a while.
So these popular channels teaching the skeptic community built a boogeyman out of feminism and social justice warriors.
Isn't that what you're trying to do by doing a purge of the alt-right?
And then what happened was we had an election, and one of the candidates, Hillary Clinton, was slightly more in support of social justice warriors than Donald Trump is. Donald Trump really ain't going to do shit to social justice warriors, but admittedly his rhetoric against social justice warriors and feminists is much stronger than Hillary Clinton, who seems to kind of embrace the social justice warriors a bit. But these people who made all this money and got all this fame off social justice warriors decided that instead of supporting the traditional liberal candidates as they would do normally, they would instead join the alt-right and start attacking Hillary Clinton and embracing Donald Trump.
It goes way more than that. Way more than that. People are making those decisions not even based on the SJW thing. It's about what they're doing. It seems like you've just stripped alt-right into nothing but a name or an insult, and then you're putting it on people, and then just giving them this one-dimensional character trait of, I do not like SJW, and then you're making it seem like that's the only thing that they're judging. You're making it sound like they're cartoon villains. It's way more complicated than that. Opinions, and political opinions, are not a seesaw. Just because you criticize one thing, it does not automatically mean that you are on the other seat of the seesaw. It does not mean that you are on the other side. Because those are not the two absolute things that you have to flip-flop between. A lot of people are criticizing Hillary because there has been this one-sided narrative that is being pushed by the media. People feel like it needs to be fair. It needs to be a fair representation of both of them. A lot of people dislike both of the candidates, but they feel like one has been getting all the negative attention and the other hasn't been getting any. Acting like these opinions are a seesaw is a generalization and is not going anywhere. And what do the terms Republican and Democrat even mean anymore? You just got all of these people just getting so sick of all this bullshit that's happening. You've got a regressive ideology on the left who is calling actual other people on the left people on the right, and then you've got other people who are saying that people on the right have gone soft. People are just so sick of labels that everything is just becoming so chaotic, and what does the label still mean? Why do you have to make sure that the person that you're voting for is the same person who has the label that you have? I think acting like these names, these labels still have any relevancy to them now is just not a good way to go about it, because honestly, they don't seem like they do.
And since the community was so heavily focused on fighting nothing but social justice warriors and feminists, that they pretty much just let this shit go unchallenged, the alt-right has become an infection on the skeptic community.
Not willing to police other people is a symptom of the infection, apparently.
And a lot of these people supporting Trump want to pretend like they're not actually part of the alt-right, which is bullshit. You're spreading the exact same memes the alt-right is spreading. You're talking the exact same shit the alt-right is talking. You can try to distance yourself from the alt-right as much as you possibly want to, but it's bullshit.
You can be a decent person, but you still have privilege. And you need to apologize for that privilege.
If someone came up to you and was spreading every bit of social justice warrior ideology that you know is bullshit, if they were going through the gambit of supporting BLM and feminism and multiculturalism, but then they said, I'm not a social justice warrior, you would immediately see through that and no, it's bullshit. No, they're a social justice warrior, and you would tell them that.
No. Why is that necessary? Why is that necessary for me to press a label on someone before I criticize them? If they are presenting all of their opinions for me, then I already have what I need to start the discussion, which is the opinion. It doesn't require me to then put them in a category so that I can criticize them for that, because they're already presenting all of that information. I don't care what they call themselves. At the end of the day, that's not really important.
You're part of this fucking infection.
And I need to cleanse myself of my sins? Or am I the sin?
Social justice warriors are not the biggest threat on this fucking planet.
No, you're right. Climate change and overpopulation are pretty big deals in my opinion. They are way bigger because they affect the entire planet. But think of it this way. Overpopulation and climate change. You can do a video on that. You can bring awareness, but at the end of the day, you're not really doing anything. And it's good to talk about them, but you're not really doing anything. Whereas you have another issue where you need to talk about that issue, where a big part in fighting against this issue is a large group of people speaking up about it and saying that this is not okay, and actually looking into these things that are happening and talking about them. And you can do something about that. You can make a difference. So would you not spend more time on the thing that you can actually make a difference on? And if you're saying that we should be going off the biggest threats in the world currently, then religion and alt-right aren't the biggest threats in the world either.
You actually educate yourself.
Educate yourself, shitlord.
Are social justice warriors really that big of a threat where we have to side with dicks like this in order to fight them?
You can have agreements on issues with certain people, and with those same people you can have complete disagreements. You don't even have to like those people, you can just agree with them. Or are you not allowed to fraternize with the enemy?
You know, I admit, I took my part in it too. I did some things that I'm not proud of. I supported Trump and spread some of his bullshit memes early on. I actually jumped on board with this whole social justice warrior thing and pretended they were the most harmful things on the planet.
This sounds like a confession. Don't apologize for something that isn't wrong. You're not doing something wrong. Don't act like you have to purge yourself of something for changing an opinion.
And so they gave you this boogeyman and you bought it hook, line, and sinker.
Do I really have to comment on who's making the boogeyman here?
Yes, I'm aware that if I turn my channel into 24/7 shit talk about social justice warriors and feminists, I would get tons of views and make lots and lots of money. But fuck that. I can't do that. My integrity will not let me do that.
Putting yourself above people will not make a good place to open a dialogue for change.
And in my opinion, this fucking community needs a goddamn enema to expel all these outriders out of it.
If you put yourself on an island, and then you start to burn the bridges and pathways that connect you to the rest of the world, that island that you're on will get smaller and smaller, and you will no longer be able to cross over to see what it's like on the other side, in the rest of the world. And you will be stuck there. And the worst thing that can happen is that you'll start to think that that's a good thing. Okay, so I actually have something else that I want to talk about. It's not really anything to do with that, it's just, I need your help with something. So, there's this academic paper that a feminist wrote that I found really interesting, and it's, you know that idea that feminists have where it's like that men created the problematic social constructs of society, like all the things that need to be unlearned by people is stuff that men created? There's basically this argument that the biology of men is inherently sexist. At least that's what I got from what she was trying to say. She goes into the whole thing about, you know, female preference and then male competition and all that sort of stuff, and she's saying that men, it's in their biology to manipulate that stuff to oppress women, I guess. I'll link it in the description, but what I'm saying with that is I want to start going into more of that academic kind of area, like looking at these papers, because I feel like even though like going after BuzzFeed and stuff, that stuff is fun. And I like doing that, I think it's entertaining, but there's only so much that I can go with that. I want to talk about more in the complex kind of area, but I can't do that because when I'm going after a BuzzFeed video, it sounds like I'm putting words in their mouth as I try to go off on more complex tangents. And I feel like I would have more to say, I would have more stuff to actually put forward if we backtracked on these things and actually went for the academic papers or the origin of these theories in the first place to see what they actually looked like. Or going after them where feminists or even anyone with a crazy idea will look at biology and other types of science to try and extrapolate these ideas. So I think that would be a really interesting way to look at it. What I'm saying is, though, I am nowhere near ready to tackle these things. I mean, I've been looking at this paper and I didn't really know much about biology. So for the past 2 days, for the entirety of those days, I've just been learning all of that stuff about sexual selection and natural selection and the stuff that Darwin said, and then how sexual selection was looked on again by Fisher, and like all of that stuff. There's so much stuff about traits and direct and indirect advantages and all that sort of stuff. And it's gonna take me a while, so all of this stuff you won't see any of it until way down the track. But what I'm saying is I'm willing to start learning that stuff now because I think it's really important that I do. And what I'm asking is, if you guys have an interest in that and you have some spare time and you're interested, just go look at the paper that I've linked in the description if it's there. If not, then I've got the title written down there so you can try and find it. And if you guys, like, if you know stuff about science and you're interested in that as well, maybe take a look at it and tell me what you think in terms of what's being said there. Or if you've looked at papers before and you have some knowledge on how to break them down into concepts and then deal with each concept, like how to approach these papers, I would really appreciate those kind of suggestions and that help, just so I can get started with these kind of things, because I want to, but I want to make sure that I actually know what I'm talking about, that I'm actually approaching it from like a good mindset, a good way of thinking, to actually try and notice all of these things and then going and researching them and actually getting all of the good stuff. So yeah, that is going to take a while, but if you are interested, I would greatly appreciate that. Because in a way, there's only so much that you can really talk about with certain stuff like BuzzFeed. It's always the same stuff that's being said in a different way. So I think that if you start backtracking and looking at how these ideas originated in, say, academic circles and then how they've changed over time, that would be another angle to go after that I think would be interesting for me to kind of put my own opinions out about. And also, I want to offer more. I want to offer better things on my channel to actually put something of interest in. I want to be an entertainment channel, but I also want to look at other stuff. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, I would like to hear what you have to say on it. And if not, well, thank you for watching anyway.